Most people, when they first hear Fidelity's rule that you need 10 times your salary saved by age 67, either spiral into panic or pat themselves on the back. But both of those reactions are missing the bigger picture. The average retirement experience today looks nothing like it did 30 or even 15 years ago, yet we're still using benchmarks built for a world of lifelong employment, generous pensions, and predictable career paths. So let's break down Fidelity's 10x rule and ask, does it hold up in the real world or just in a fantasy where rent is still $600 per month and you never get laid off? Fidelity's retirement benchmark is one of the most widely used guidelines in personal finance. It's designed to answer the big question of, am I saving enough? The rule is simple. Aim to have 1 times your salary saved by age 30, 3 times by age 40, 6 times by age 50, 8 times by 60, and 10 times by age 67. So if you're earning the median household income of $83,000 by the time you retire, then you need $830,000. That simplicity is part of what's made it so sticky. It gives people something solid to shoot for in a world where retirement often feels as overwhelming and speculative as my 8th marriage. But retirement isn't one size fits all, and what seems like a clear roadmap might actually be hiding some questionable assumptions. So before you trust the 10x rule with your financial future, let's take a closer look at the world it assumes you're living in. That 10 times salary number isn't pulled out of thin air. It's built on very specific assumptions about what your working life will look like. Start saving 15% by age 25 and never misses a year. Invests more than 50% in stocks over their lifetime. Gets annual salary increases that outpace inflation, retires exactly at age 67, lives to age 93, and maintains pre-retirement lifestyle by replacing 45% of income from savings with Social Security covering the rest. But how realistic is it to hit these different benchmarks at 30, 40, 50, 60, and 67 for someone starting at age 25? I decided to figure that out by creating a random, made-up person named Lando. According to Capital One, the median salary for ages 25 to 34 is roughly $57,000. Since we're looking at a 25-year-old for this first case study, we should assume that they're making a little less than that $57,000 median. Taking into account less experience and career advancement, I'm going with a $52,000 income. On screen, you can see the rest of my assumptions. Historically, real wage growth in the US has averaged around 0.62% annually, but that's gone up a little in recent times, so I decided to round up to 1%. I went with a real return, so after inflation, of 5% per year, and I'm using Fidelity's static 15% yearly savings rate. By age 30, Lando slightly beats that 1x target Fidelity says he needs saved up. At age 40, things are looking just as good. While the benchmark says he should have 3 times his salary, Lando actually has about 3.3 times his salary. At age 50, Lando is feeling great about the decision he made at 25 because while he needs to have 6 times his salary saved up, he's delighted to see he's got 6.8 times his salary. By age 60, Lando's feeling a little old and tired. The good news is that while Fidelity says that he needs 8 times his salary, compounding has taken over, so he has 12 times that. When Lando is ready to retire at 67, the Fidelity benchmark says he needs 10 times his $79,000 salary. But it turns out he has a little over 16 times that amount, which is roughly an extra $500,000. To take it one step further, since Fidelity states that Lando only needs to replace 45% of his income because Social Security will cover the rest, his portfolio withdrawal rate can be as low as 2.7%, which comes out to roughly $35,000 per year. Add that $35,000 per year to the $31,000 he's getting from Social Security, and he's living on about $66,000 per year in today's dollars. Following Fidelity's benchmark puts Lando in an even better spot than expected. But what happens if Lando gets a late start and isn't able to begin the process until after the age of 25? I decided to take all of the original assumptions except change the start date age to 30, 35, and 40 to see what happens under different life stages, since it allows for a more realistic comparison. As a reminder for all of the what about inflation bros, the numbers you are about to see are all in real dollars, so today's dollars. Inflation has already been accounted for. Starting at age 30 actually still worked out. Clearly, the one-time salary isn't possible since Lando is starting with $0. At 50, he was still shy of the 6 times salary target. By 60, he was slightly outpacing the 8 times target needed. and retired with 13 times his salary at 67 and a couple $100,000 extra dollars in his account. At age 35, it starts to get a little tougher. As you can see, based on Fidelity's benchmarks, Lando is showing behind at every single checkpoint. It's not until age 67 that he barely meets his 10 times salary target. He's basically on edge his whole life, hoping nothing goes wrong that will screw up his plan. By age 40, Lando was pretty much screwed if he wants to follow the Fidelity 10x rule. At this point, it doesn't matter if he earns more money, his actual target will not change. The only way to improve his actual target to try to get closer to Fidelity's 10x benchmark target is either get a higher real investment return, which is less in his control, or he can choose to increase his annual savings rate. I checked, and if he bumped it up from 15 to 20%, then he would reach 10 times his salary by age 67. While I do have some positive things to say about Fidelity's age and income-based benchmarks, which I will cover in just a minute, there are several major problems with using it as a one-size-fits-all solution. First of all, based on the age ranges I found, current savings amounts aren't even close to the 15% target for these benchmarks. So if someone is comparing their numbers to what Fidelity says that they should have, it's going to show you may be way off. This has the potential to backfire psychologically. When someone sees the benchmark and realizes that they are way behind, they might feel so discouraged that they just shut down and give up entirely, because why even try at that point? I suspect that this could be one of the reasons I see comments from people saying that they plan on working forever, as they believe that they will never have enough money to retire. Next is education around the whole thing. This benchmark assumes an individual is educated enough on personal finances and investing to understand what they're looking at. I covered this in more detail in another video on how the retirement system is designed to fail you if you want to hear my full thoughts. I'm not saying you need to know how to cure cancer or split atoms here, because that level of intelligence isn't necessary. But most high schools and colleges don't teach this sort of thing to prepare any of us for real-world personal finances. How could we expect anyone to start their careers knowing that they should be saving a minimum of 15%? If they're lucky, they have someone in their personal life who teaches them the basics, but we can't just assume there's a weirdo like me who won't shut up about investing in a Roth IRA to friends and family members. There's also a bit of an income versus spending mismatch. The 10 times rule ties your retirement goal to your income rather than your actual spending. Someone who earns $200,000 but spends $80,000 doesn't need anywhere near 10 times their income. Heck, they may not even need 10 times their current spending either. On the other hand, someone who makes $60,000 but spends $55,000 might need more than 10 times. Spending in retirement is a lot more nuanced than this rule gives credit. Research shows that retirement spending follows a pattern called the retirement spending smile. It's the idea that spending in retirement isn't flat. It tends to follow a curve. People often spend more in the earlier years when they're more active, less in the middle years as they slow down, and then a bit more later on due to healthcare costs. That initial dip down is a lot more extreme with retirees who have more wealth, since they have a lot more discretionary spending, and less extreme but still noticeable for people with less wealth. This model also assumes everyone retires at 67. One of the more surprising things that I've learned over the years is how many of you want to retire earlier than 67, or at least have the option to do so. I'm not saying this is completely unexpected, because who really wants to work until their mid to late 60s? But I've heard so many people saying they're working towards having the option to retire at 60 or earlier, which I find extremely fascinating. For those individuals, this 8x benchmark at 60 might not cut it, and likely needs to be a different multiple depending on when you retire and your spending habits. Fidelity's benchmark also doesn't account for changing income patterns. Today's workers are more likely to have multiple career changes, periods of unemployment, or non-linear income growth. The assumption of steady 1% annual raises is laughably outdated. This is one of the main criticisms I have of that book everyone recommends called Die with Zero. I understand the philosophical point of ensuring you enjoy your money throughout life rather than just when you're old. But this is coming from an author who is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And the reality is that for us normies, it's very possible to either have your income level off as you age, or decline due to other reasons. So encouraging people to spend as much as possible, assuming it's so easy to make buttloads of money in the future no matter what, comes off as a luxury belief to me. Rob Henderson coined the term in his memoir Trouble. It's a very good book, highly recommend. But it's the belief or value that signals high social status, but only works for people with privilege, usually the wealthy or highly educated. The idea is that just like luxury goods, these beliefs serve as a way for elites to show off. But instead of buying a designer bag, they adopt beliefs that sound noble or enlightened, yet would hurt or be unrealistic for people without elite level wealth. The 10x rule is also a little too blind to geography and lifestyle. $1 million goes a lot further in a place like the Midwest than it does in Manhattan. It completely ignores cost of living differences and lifestyle choices. The benchmark tries to simplify reality, but sometimes oversimplification can lead to really bad outcomes. Life doesn't move in a straight line, and neither does the money you have invested for retirement. If you check your progress against Fidelity's benchmarks during a market downturn or when it's going sideways, it might look like you're way behind even if you're actually on track. You get the impression something's wrong when it really isn't. It can mess with your confidence and push you to make unnecessary changes. So if these benchmarks don't match reality and come with all of these issues, why do they even exist and why do we keep using them? I don't think Fidelity is out here trying to mislead anyone. The 10x benchmark exists because it solves a real psychological problem we all face when asking big questions like, how much do I need to retire? Most people can't even be bothered to figure out where their money goes each month, so a question like this quickly leads to analysis paralysis. Even if you're in your 30s or 40s, it's still a tough ask. You're being told to project yourself 30 years into the future, then somehow figure out how much you'll need for another 30 after that. That feels borderline impossible. Based on how the last 20 years of my life has gone, the odds of my predicting the next 20, let alone 40, are about as good as asking my 7-year-old niece for career advice. Retirement planning can be complicated, emotionally loaded, and frankly, kind of terrifying. When people are faced with that many unknowns, they freeze and do nothing. Or they pick an ungodly high number like $9.5 million, as I showed in another video I'll have linked down in the description for you to check out after this one. Suggesting a 10x benchmark is just an easy way to break through all of the confusion. It gives you a goal to shoot for, even if it's not exactly right for everyone. Here's why it works. It's plain old simple. It feels easy to understand, so people trust it more and are more likely to act on it. That alone makes it more effective than 95% of the retirement advice floating around on the internet. It also helps people benchmark themselves against others, which we're hardwired to care about. Am I ahead? Am I behind? How do I stack up? I'm not a huge fan of social comparison in general, since it can have a negative effect on a large portion of the population. It's easy to feel like you're falling behind or not doing enough when you're constantly measuring your life against someone else's benchmark. But as Will Storr points out in the status game, the drive to compare ourselves to others is hardwired. It's part of how we survived and evolved. It pushes us to grow, to cooperate, to improve. Social comparison isn't always toxic. It depends on how and why we're doing it. And in this case, I think the upsides outweigh the downsides. If seeing where you should be financially helps you take action or set a clear goal for yourself, that's a net positive. It's not about status for the sake of status. It's about using that comparison as fuel to move you forward. If you want to know more about how this status game applies to our personal finances, then my video on the topic will be linked down in the description below. Turning a vague goal like save for retirement into something specific like I need X by age Y makes it much easier to follow through. A concrete number gives you something solid to work toward rather than just hoping you're on track. For younger investors, it creates a clear starting line. If you're 25 with nothing saved, that 1x by 30 target gives you direction without overwhelming you. For people in their 40s or 50s, it can be a gut check. If you're 45 and sitting at 1 times your salary instead of 4 times, that shortfall forces you to face the reality and maybe for the first time, take action. Compared to vague advice like save what you can, having a target is simply more actionable. You know where you stand and more importantly, where you need to go. So even though I just spent the last however many minutes picking apart Fidelity's 10x benchmark like it owed me money, I actually find it useful. For what it is, a broad rule of thumb, it's solid. It simplifies a complicated question, gives people a starting point, and helps them take action. And for the average person who just wants to know if they're somewhere on track, it's a hell of a lot better than nothing. But if you're a nerd like me who wants to get specific numbers locked in, or if you're getting closer to retirement and can't afford to just guess your way through the next 30 years, then it's probably not enough. At that point, it's like using a GPS but never typing in a destination. You'll get moving, but you don't really know if you're headed anywhere useful. The people that close to retirement need a real plan based on your spending, your savings, your goals, and your risks, not just a multiple of your salary. If you want to go beyond Fidelity's benchmarks to figure out how much you'll need to retire, then reach out to an hourly fee-based financial planner. If you're more of a do-it-yourself type person, then I'll link the retirement planning software I personally use down in the description below, along with my personal finance bundle spreadsheets that I use as well. If you want to learn more about the financial taste gap that affects every one of us, then watch this video to your left next. Hit that like button before you go. I'll see you in the next one, friends. Done.